Ethan leaned back in his chair, his face illuminated by the bluish glow of his laptop screen. He smirked as he clicked through a series of grainy, black and white photos. "You're not serious, are you? I mean, come on, Logan. Ghosts? This stuff's all fake." Logan leaned in closer, his dark curls falling into his eyes as he peered at the screen. "Ethan, I swear this place is different. It's not just the usual urban legend crap. The reports are all over the internet. This prison is legit haunted." He tapped the screen, showing a blurry photo of what appeared to be a shadowy figure standing in a crumbling hallway. "See that? People claim they've actually talked to the ghosts. And look at this." Logan switched to a video clip. The shaky footage showed a man holding a flashlight, his voice trembling as he whispered into the dark. Warden, are you here?" Moments later, the flashlight flickered, and a deep, guttural sound filled the air. The video abruptly ended as the man screamed. Ethan snorted. "Yeah, that's just some guy messing around with After Effects. You can't seriously believe this stuff." "Then why is there so much about it?" Logan countered, pulling up another article. "This place has a history, Ethan. Ridgewell Penitentiary, built in the 1920s, shut down in the 80s. They say the warden was a sadistic bastard who made life hell for the prisoners. The guy even went missing one night, just vanished without a trace. People think he's still there, watching over the place, keeping everyone else trapped." Ethan rolled his eyes, trying to hide the unease creeping into his mind. "Sure, Logan, I'm supposed to believe a guy who died decades ago is still hanging around. What? Waiting for visitors to scare? Ghosts don't pay rent, man." Logan grinned, sensing an opportunity. "If it's all fake, then why don't we check it out? See for ourselves." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You're kidding, right?" "I'm serious. Think about it. Some of these videos have millions of views. If we go and film something, even just a couple of creepy shots, it could blow up, maybe even go viral. Don't you want to prove it's fake? This is your chance." Ethan hesitated. He wasn't the superstitious type, but the thought of actually going to a place like that, it sent a chill down his spine. Still, he couldn't let Logan think he was scared. "Fine," he said, crossing his arms. "But when we don't find anything, you owe me dinner." Logan clapped him on the shoulder, his grin widening. "Deal. You won't regret this, man. Tomorrow night, we'll head out. Ridgewell isn't far, and I've already got directions." Ethan shook his head, muttering under his breath. "You've really thought this through, haven't you? Great. I'm about to waste my weekend in some abandoned death trap." "Don't worry, Ethan. It'll be fun." "Besides," Logan said, pulling up another chilling photo of the prison's decaying interior, "what's the worst that could happen?" Ethan gave him a dry look. "You realize that's the kind of thing people say right before everything goes to hell." Logan laughed and shut the laptop, the room falling into a sudden, uneasy silence. "Just bring a flashlight and an open mind. Who knows? Maybe we'll even meet the warden." Ethan didn't respond, but as he glanced at the now dark screen, the shadowy figure from the video lingered in his thoughts. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice whispered that this wasn't just another ghost story. It was the beginning of something much darker. The narrow road stretched ahead of them, winding through shadowy woods that seemed to grow darker with every passing mile. Ethan tightened his grip on the steering wheel, casting an uneasy glance at Logan, who sat beside him with a mischievous grin plastered across his face. "You know," Logan said, his voice breaking the silence, "this road has its own history. People say it's cursed, something about all the convicts they used to march to Ridgewell Penitentiary. Most never came back." Ethan rolled his eyes, trying to shake the growing unease in his chest. "Right, and let me guess, they're ghosts hitchhike with unsuspecting drivers." Logan chuckled. "Close, but no. What I'm talking about is much worse." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "There's this story I read online about a guy named Mark who went to Ridgewell with his buddies a few years ago. They were thrill seekers, like us. Thought it'd be fun to poke around, maybe see a ghost or two. And let me guess, it didn't end well." Ethan asked, his skepticism laced with a touch of nervous laughter. "Not even close," Logan replied. "Mark and his friends made it inside and started exploring. It was mostly what you'd expect. Graffiti, broken glass, rats scurrying around. But then they found this old lantern sitting on a table in what used to be the Warden's office." Ethan glanced at Logan. "A lantern? Like the one from those videos?" "Exactly," Logan said, nodding. "They decided to light it, for kicks. The second the flame caught, the temperature in the room dropped. Mark said it felt like someone was breathing down his neck, but when he turned around, no one was there. His friends started hearing voices, faint whispers calling their names. Then the shadows came." Ethan scoffed, though his knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "Shadows? Really?" "Yeah. And they weren't just tricks of the light. Mark swore they moved, fast, like they were alive. One of his friends freaked out and ran. The others chased after him, but the shadows, they didn't stop. They followed. Mark said he barely made it out, but when he did, his buddies were gone." Ethan frowned. "Gone? Like missing?" "Worse," Logan said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "A week later, they found the bodies. All 3 of them. Each one was locked inside an old prison cell. And get this, there were no keys. No way they could have locked themselves in." Silence filled the car, broken only by the hum of the tires on the asphalt. Ethan let out a shaky breath, trying to keep his cool. "You're full of it, Logan. That's just some creepypasta you found online." Logan smirked. "Maybe. But are you sure you're not just a little freaked out?" "No," Ethan lied, though the pit in his stomach suggested otherwise. He stared ahead, his unease deepening as the woods began to thin, revealing the outline of a massive structure in the distance. Ridgewell Penitentiary loomed like a dark monolith against the night sky, its crumbling walls and shattered windows giving it an almost predatory appearance. "There it is," Logan said, his voice filled with excitement. "Ridgewell." Ethan pulled the car to a stop just outside the rusted gate, where a faded sign hung loosely, "No trespassing," in large weathered letters. The sight of it sent a shiver down his spine. Logan opened the door and stepped out, grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. "Come on, man, let's make some history." Ethan stayed in the car for a moment, staring at the towering prison. His earlier bravado was slipping, replaced by a gnawing doubt. Logan's story had unsettled him more than he wanted to admit, and the sight of the penitentiary wasn't helping. "You coming or what?" Logan called, already heading toward the gate with a flashlight in hand. Ethan sighed, forcing himself to open the door. As he stepped out, the cold night air wrapped around him like an unwelcome embrace. "This is a bad idea," he muttered, though he couldn't bring himself to turn back. And so, together, they walked toward the gaping maw of Ridgewell Penitentiary, the shadows of its past waiting to greet them. The heavy iron gates groaned as Logan pushed them open, their rusted hinges echoing into the cold night. Ridgewell Penitentiary stood before them, its crumbling facade casting jagged shadows in the dim light of the stars. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and decay, and the oppressive silence pressed down on them like a weight. Ethan shined his flashlight onto the massive double doors. The paint had long since peeled away, revealing splintered wood beneath. "This place is a death trap," he muttered, his voice tight. Logan smirked and nudged him. "Come on, scaredy cat. This is what we came for." The door creaked as they pushed it open, revealing a gaping darkness beyond. The faint smell of rot and damp earth wafted out, making Ethan wrinkle his nose. Great. Smells like something died in here. Logan stepped inside, sweeping his flashlight across the cavernous entryway. The beam illuminated broken tiles, graffiti-covered walls, and remnants of rusted chains hanging from the ceiling. "This is insane," Logan whispered, a mix of awe and excitement in his voice. Ethan followed reluctantly, his own flashlight, casting shaky beams. The sound of their footsteps echoed eerily, as though the walls themselves were listening. "I can't believe we're doing this," Ethan muttered. The two began exploring, their lights cutting through the oppressive gloom. The halls stretched on endlessly, lined with rusted cell doors. In some places, the walls seemed to bleed, the paint peeling away to reveal strange dark stains beneath. As they moved deeper, the air grew colder. Their breath fogged in front of them, and faint sounds began to drift through the stillness. A soft scraping, like something being dragged across the floor. A distant thud, the faint creak of metal. "It's just the wind," Logan said, though his voice had lost some of its earlier bravado. "Sure," Ethan replied, his eyes darting nervously towards the shadows. "Because wind totally sounds like footsteps." They entered what appeared to be the remains of the Warden's office. Papers lay scattered across the floor, brittle and yellowed with age. A rotting desk slumped in the corner, and an ancient clock hung crookedly on the wall, its hands frozen in time. Ethan swept his flashlight across the room, pausing as the beam caught a dark stain on the floor beneath the desk. "Let's keep moving," he said quickly, the unease in his voice impossible to hide. As they stepped back into the hall, Ethan's flashlight flickered. He banged it against his palm. "Don't you dare die on me." The light went out. "You've got to be kidding me," Ethan groaned, fumbling to turn it back on. Beside him, Logan's flashlight flickered, and then blinked out as well, leaving them in complete darkness. "This is not funny," Ethan hissed. "Logan, tell me you have a backup." "Not a chance," Logan muttered. "Stay close. I don't want to trip over something." They moved cautiously, their hands brushing against cold, damp walls as they navigated the pitch-black hallway. Ethan's heart pounded, each sound amplified by the darkness. Then, as they rounded a corner, something caught their eye, a faint glow. "What the hell is that?" Ethan whispered, his voice trembling. The glow grew brighter as they approached, revealing an old lantern sitting on the ground. Its glass was cracked, the metal rusted, yet it emitted a faint, unnatural light that pulsed softly. "This has to be a joke," Ethan said, his voice harsh. "Did you plant this here?" Logan shook his head, his expression just as bewildered. "No way. I swear, I've never seen this before." Ethan bent down, inspecting it closely. "It's filthy. It's probably been here for decades." "Only one way to find out," Logan said, pulling out his cigarette lighter. He flicked it on, the small flame dancing in the dark. "Don't," Ethan started, but it was too late. Logan lit the lantern. The flame roared to life, far brighter than it should have been. The hallway was suddenly bathed in a golden glow. The shadows pushed back violently. The light felt wrong, too intense, too alive. "Okay, that's freaky," Ethan muttered, taking a step back. Logan held the lantern up, staring at it in awe. "This is incredible," he said, his voice reverent. "It's like it's brand new." "Logan, put it down," Ethan urged. "I don't like this." "Relax," Logan said, grinning. "It's just a lantern. What's the worst that could happen?" As the light from the lantern filled the hallway, the strange noises from before returned. This time, they were louder, closer. Ethan's skin prickled as he glanced nervously at the shadows creeping along the edges of the light. "Logan," he whispered, his voice barely audible, "I think we should leave." Logan didn't respond. his gaze fixed on the lantern. The flame flickered, casting distorted shapes on the walls. Ethan could have sworn he saw a figure, a tall, menacing silhouette, lingering at the edge of the glow, and then somewhere in the distance came the sound of a door slamming shut. The glow of the lantern cut through the darkness like a knife, its golden light flickering eerily against the cold, decaying walls of Ridgewell Penitentiary. Ethan clutched the handle tightly, his knuckles white as they ventured deeper into the labyrinth of cells. Beside him, Logan's expression was a mix of fascination and dread, his gaze darting toward the shadows that loomed just beyond the lantern's reach. "Do you feel that?" Logan whispered, his voice trembling. "It's like we're not alone." Ethan nodded, the unease in his chest growing heavier with every step. As they passed the first cell, he instinctively held up the lantern. The light spilled inside, illuminating what at first appeared to be an empty, decaying space. But then, a figure began to materialize. A gaunt, skeletal man sat hunched in the corner, his hollow eyes staring straight ahead. His skin was pale and stretched tight over his bones, and his mouth opened in a silent scream as he suddenly lunged toward the bars, his hands grasping at nothing. "Help me," the ghost wailed, his voice echoing through the hallway like a mournful wind. "Please, don't leave me here." Ethan stumbled back, his heart pounding. "What the hell was that?" "It's real," Logan whispered, his eyes wide. "The stories are real." They moved past the cell, the ghost's cries fading into a chilling silence. As they held the lantern to the next cell, another figure appeared, this one far more grotesque. A massive man with deep, jagged scars across his face stood chained to the wall, his eyes burning with hatred. His ghostly chains rattled as he strained against them. "I didn't deserve this," the ghost bellowed, his voice like thunder. "That bastard Warden locked me up. It wasn't my fault." Logan stepped back, his breath coming in short gasps. This is insane. Why are they still here?" Ethan shook his head, unable to tear his eyes away from the horrifying apparition. "I don't know, but it's like they're trapped." They continued down the hallway, each cell revealing a new nightmare. A woman with hollow sockets where her eyes should have been clawed at the bars, her bloody fingernails leaving streaks of crimson across the rusted metal. "Please," she whimpered, her voice cracked and desperate. "Get me out of here. He'll come back. He always comes back." Another cell revealed a gaunt figure hunched over in the corner, rocking back and forth while muttering incoherently. As the lantern's light touched him, his head snapped up, revealing a face contorted in agony. "He'll never let us go," the ghost screamed. "We're his forever." Ethan's grip on the lantern tightened as he turned to Logan, his voice shaking. "This is wrong. These people, they're suffering, even in death." Logan nodded, his bravado completely gone. "It's the Warden. It has to be. He's keeping them here, just like he did when they were alive." "But why?" Ethan asked, his voice barely a whisper. "What does he gain from this?" Logan didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the lantern, its glow flickering like a heartbeat. "This thing," he said slowly, "it's not just a light. It's like a key. It's connected to him, to all of them." They stopped in front of a final cell, larger and more imposing than the others. The bars were thicker, the walls scorched black. As the lantern's light filled the cell, the figure inside rose to its feet. A towering man in a tattered uniform stepped forward, his face a hollow mask of rage and despair. His eyes glowed faintly, burning with an unnatural light. "You shouldn't have come here," the ghost growled, his voice deep and menacing. "He knows you're here, and now you're his too." The lantern flickered violently, casting twisted shadows across the hallway. The air grew colder, and a low, guttural sound echoed through the prison, a sound that made every hair on their bodies stand on end. "Logan," Ethan whispered, his voice breaking. "We need to get out of here. Now." But before Logan could respond, the light of the lantern dimmed and the hallway plunged into darkness. The darkness was alive. Ethan and Logan ran blindly through the labyrinthine halls of Ridgewell Penitentiary, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The golden glow of the lantern was gone, leaving them in pitch blackness. Behind them, the haunting screams of the ghostly inmates echoed, filling the air with a cacophony of despair. "Logan!" Ethan shouted, his voice cracking. "Where are you?" "Here!" Logan's voice came from somewhere ahead, laced with panic. "Just keep moving!" Ethan stumbled, his hand brushing against the cold, damp wall to steady himself. The sharp scent of mildew and decay filled his nose. Somewhere nearby, metal clanged against metal, a sound too deliberate to be a random echo. The floor beneath them seemed to shift, the cold stone almost feeling alive. A deep, guttural growl reverberated through the halls, sending a shiver down their spines. "He's coming," Logan hissed. "We have to move faster." Ethan pushed himself forward, his heart pounding as he tried to follow Logan's voice, his eyes strained against the darkness, catching fleeting glimpses of ghostly faces flashing in and out of view. He could feel the cold breath of something close behind, something that should not exist. Then came the voice, deep, commanding, and dripping with malice. "You think you can leave? You belong to me now." Ethan's blood ran cold. The warden's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, echoing in the void. A sharp scraping sound followed, like claws raking across stone. "Run!" Logan shouted, his footsteps pounding ahead. Ethan's legs burned as he sprinted, his mind racing. The screams of the ghosts grew louder, mingling with the warden's mocking laughter. It was as though the prison itself had come alive, closing in around them. Suddenly, Logan stopped short, and Ethan collided into him. "What are you doing?" Ethan hissed. "There's a staircase," Logan said, his voice trembling. "It's our way out." They scrambled up the stairs, their hands slipping on the grime-coated railings. The walls seemed to groan as the growling grew louder, closer. At the top of the staircase, they burst into another hallway, this one narrower and lined with doors. "Which way?" Ethan panted, looking both directions. Logan pointed. "That way. I think I see light." They bolted toward the faint glow at the end of the corridor, their feet slamming against the floor, but as they neared the light, a figure stepped into view. It was the warden. His towering form blocked the entire hallway, his hollow, glowing eyes fixed on them. The tattered remains of his uniform swayed as though caught in an unseen wind, and his bony hands gripped the cell keys hanging from his belt. The air around him seemed to warp, the darkness bending to his will. "You can't run from me," the warden said, his voice a guttural snarl. "This is my domain." Logan grabbed Ethan's arm. "Back! Go back!" They turned and ran, the sound of the warden's heavy boots thundering behind them. Doors along the hallway slammed shut one by one, forcing them into an ever-narrowing path. The air grew colder with each step, their breath visible in the dim light as they desperately searched for an exit. Ethan's chest burned, his legs screaming for relief, but adrenaline kept him moving. Behind them, the warden's growl turned into a deafening roar, shaking the very walls of the prison. "This way!" Logan shouted, diving through an open door. Ethan followed, slamming the door shut behind them. They leaned against it, gasping for air. "Did we lose him?" Ethan whispered. Logan nodded, his face pale. "I think." The door exploded inward, splinters flying as the warden stepped through, his glowing eyes locked onto them, his skeletal hand reaching out. Ethan and Logan bolted, weaving through the room and into another hallway. The chase continued, each turn feeling more hopeless than the last. The warden's voice echoed through the prison, cold and relentless. "You'll never escape. This is your sentence." Just as they thought they'd outrun him, the air shifted. The oppressive weight of the darkness became suffocating, and an icy hand clamped down on Ethan's shoulder. He screamed as he was yanked backward. "Ethan," Logan cried, turning to help. But before Logan could act, the warden's other hand closed around his neck. The two friends struggled, but it was no use. The warden's grip was unyielding, his ghostly strength far beyond anything they could resist. "You thought you could escape me," the warden said, his voice a chilling whisper, "but no one leaves Ridgewell." The lantern's light flared once more, illuminating the warden's ghastly face. His grin stretched impossibly wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth. With a final, bone-chilling laugh, the darkness swallowed them whole. The rusted gates of Ridgewell Penitentiary groaned on their hinges as two figures stepped through, their laughter cutting through the chilly evening air. "This is going to be epic," Matt said, grinning as he adjusted his backpack. "Wait till we tell everyone we went ghost hunting in the most haunted prison in the state." His friend Chris rolled his eyes, the beam of his flashlight bobbing as they walked. "Right. And let me guess, we'll see the ghost of the warden and maybe some poor inmates who never got out. Man, these stories are so overblown." The two ventured further into the decaying structure, their voices echoing off the crumbling walls. Dust hung heavy in the air, and the faint smell of mildew mixed with something darker, older. "Seriously though," Matt said, shining his flashlight across the graffiti-covered walls. "You hear about those two guys who went missing here a few months back? Logan and... what was the other guy's name?" "Ethan," Chris supplied. "Yeah, but come on, they probably fell into a hole or something. This place is ancient." As they continued deeper into the prison, the air grew colder, their breath forming faint clouds in the dim light. The hallway stretched endlessly ahead, lined with rows of rusted bars and empty cells. "You think they really kept prisoners here, even after it shut down?" Matt asked, his voice quieter now. Chris shrugged. "Who knows, but I doubt ghosts are the ones locking people up." They rounded a corner, and both flashlights began to flicker. Matt banged his against his palm. "Oh, come on, not now." Chris's flashlight sputtered, casting brief flashes of light before plunging them into complete darkness. "This has to be a joke," Chris muttered. "You brought extra batteries, right?" Matt didn't answer. His attention was drawn to a faint golden glow further down the hallway. "Hey, do you see that?" Chris turned toward the light, squinting. "Yeah, what is that?" They crept toward it, their footsteps unnervingly loud in the stillness. The glow grew brighter, revealing an antique lantern sitting on the ground. Its cracked glass emitted an unnatural pulsing light that cast distorted shadows on the walls. "No way," Matt whispered. "It's the lantern from the stories." Chris crouched down, studying it cautiously. "It's got to be fake. Someone probably left it here to scare people off." Matt ignored him, picking it up and examining it. "It's warm," he said, his voice tinged with awe. "Like it's alive." Before Chris could respond, Matt flicked the lantern on. The golden light flared, filling the hallway and revealing the cells around them. At first, they seemed empty, but as the two friends moved the lantern closer, shapes began to materialize within the shadows. Matt shined the light into the nearest cell, and both of them froze. Inside were two ghostly figures, their translucent forms hunched and pale. Their faces were twisted in anguish, their hollow eyes staring blankly ahead. One of them turned, his features unmistakable. "Logan," Matt breathed, his voice trembling. The other figure followed, his expression filled with a mix of despair and rage. "Ethan," Chris whispered, stepping back instinctively. The ghosts moved toward the bars, their spectral hands reaching out as if to grab the lantern, their mouths opened in soundless screams, their desperation palpable. "Help us," Logan's ghost whispered, his voice faint and echoing. "Please, get us out of here." Ethan's ghost shook his head violently, his hollow eyes burning with anger. "You shouldn't have come," he rasped. "You're his now." Before Matt or Chris could react, the golden light of the lantern flickered, the temperature plummeted, and the faint sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the hallway. A deep, guttural laugh filled the air. The two friends turned to run, but the lantern's glow flared violently, illuminating the towering figure of the warden standing at the end of the hallway. His skeletal grin stretched impossibly wide, his hollow eyes blazing with unnatural light. "You've come to join my collection," the warden said, his voice dripping with malice. The lantern's light extinguished, plunging the hallway into complete darkness.